Love. A tricky word. You often find it in movies, books, lyrics, or at the end of those signs that moms buy from Home Goods. But if you've ever found love in your life, then you've probably shown that love by making out. And if you've ever made out, you know that picking music for that occasion can be like solving a quadratic equation. What would my partner like? What would I like? Am I playing something that's too serious or too weird? Well, fear not. After some extensive research, I have come to you with some hard and fast rules that you can use to pick makeout music stress-free. Now you might be like, Serge, wait, whoa. First of all, this is a little out of pocket. Secondly, do you have a lot of experience making out? Who qualified you to make this video? All right, so the research started with my friend Charlie. Now he's had a girlfriend for quite a bit now, but like the rest of us, there was a point in time when he was struggling to pick something to play. Until one day he was fed up with the stress and the panic, and he set out with a goal to make the best makeout playlist of all time. And he did, and he gave it to me. And it's the only thing I've been using for maybe the last year or two. So I decided to dust off my Microsoft Excel skills and really tear this thing apart for all of its secrets, for the good of humanity, even though it kind of feels wrong on some level. All right, let's cut to the chase here. Key takeaway number 1 is that the ideal BPM for a makeout track is 110. What is BPM? Stands for beats per minute. Kind of indicates the speed, movement, or just overall pace of a track. And of the 94 tracks in Charlie's playlist, 110 was the average. And 110 is about this fast. You can find that exact BPM in a tune like Choir Boy's Hellmouth. For me though, generally speaking, I kind of like stuff more on the slower side. So something like Duster's Closer to the Speed of Sound is more what I'm into for this kind of thing. Fun fact for you with BPM is that in a club, like for club music, the ideal tempo for that kind of track is 128 BPM. And that's in part due to the fact that the average resting human heart rate is somewhere between 60 and 100 BPM. So it's kind of like almost double, and it's kind of easy for you to latch onto that with movement and dancing. So if that's the average BPM to dance, 128, you probably want to be under that for making out, or not. I don't know what you're into, but I would prefer to be under that. Also, quick disclaimer about BPM. Algorithms that kind of analyze songs for BPM, like the one I used, it's called TuneBat, aren't entirely accurate and flawless. But regardless of the actual BPM they assign, because I don't think they're ever too far off, it can still be a good indicator of the amount of movement or energy a track has, like I said before. But that brings me to my next point, which is that there is no one ideal BPM for a makeout track, even though I just said there was. When you're picking out songs for a playlist like this, sequencing matters. The description of Charlie's playlist says, get cozy, don't shuffle. And there is a reason. Now, if you look at the tracks here, take a look at the BPM. There's a super nice back and forth between stuff on the faster side and stuff on the slower side. And that happens about every 2 or 3 tracks. Now, I'm not saying you need to go ahead and calculate the BPM of every single song you add to your playlist, because that's kind of insane. But you should consider this general philosophy of a little bit of fast and a little bit of slow, and just keep to that. Keep the vibe and the movement fresh within a range of speeds that you feel comfortable with. Because it's only at the halfway point in this playlist that you start to see large blocks of similar BPM happening. But halfway for this playlist is about 3 hours in. So if you're 3 hours in, I'm assuming you want to probably start wrapping things up anyway. And you know, the increase in speed might be a good thing. And this leads me to my next point, which is average song length. Now, not to get too philosophical here, but when you're thinking about making out, it's not intuitively something you think of as fast paced. And I think in that vein, Charlie's average song length being 4 minutes and 15 seconds makes sense. You don't want a bunch of short changes in musical ambiance or background distracting you. You want tracks that have a bit of a progression and explore a little bit, rather than really tight, concise 3-minute pop tracks. Some good examples of some longer tracks on here, basically any beach house track like Chariot or Days of Candy, or Ladies and Gentlemen, We Are Floating in Space by Spiritualized, or Julie Cruz's Falling, which is also known as the Twin Peaks song, or even something like the Downtown Lights by the Blue Nile. Now, after I search, I've literally heard of none of these. Don't worry, you don't need to kind of gain insight from them. We know that you want to lean toward longer tracks, and we know that you want to vary your BPM in chunks, right? But something about this playlist I'll also tell you that's kind of more qualitative is that none of these tracks are very vocally focused at all. I mean, save for a handful of R&B cuts here and there, or something like Julie London's I'm in the Mood for Love, which is kind of from the 50s, like lounge singer era. All these songs have a complete lack of vocal focus. And it's not that they have no lyrics, but oftentimes you'll find a vocalist pushed back in the mix, like soaked in copious amounts of delay and reverb and other juicy effects. And at the end of the day, I think that's a good thing. You don't want to be distracted by lyrics or what a song means when you're with your partner. The only words you should be focusing on are any words you two are saying, if at all. I also want to apologize very briefly to music theory nerds for using TuneBat to find the key and mode and everything of every song, because I only realized after the fact that it is absolute trash at actually being accurate with that, because I wanted to be able to be like, oh my god, a third of Charlie's songs are in minor, that's so cool, you know, it's a good way to shake up the chords you're hearing. But yeah, TuneBat's horrible. Thanks Reddit for letting me know that. That's the end of my apology, I'm sorry. Anyway, moving on. In terms of decade, this playlist does lean a little bit older. Now don't take this advice directly, don't be like, oh, he's saying I need to add a lot of 90s songs to my playlist. No. About a quarter of the songs here are from the 90s, 10% of them are from the 80s, and the effective remainder is stuff that you and I probably know pretty decently from the last decade. I personally love the 90s cuts that are on here because when you factor in all the other aspects we talked about, like pushed back vocals with lots of effects and long song lengths, you're basically calling for dream pop and shoegaze. From the 90s, you get Cocteau Twins, Mazzy Star, MBV, Slow Dive, Ride, Duster, the good stuff. Those long tracked like guitars enveloping you all around, low vocals drowning in effects. That's the stuff I'm into on here. And what's funny too is that a lot of Charlie's picks from like the 2010s and, you know, the last year or two kind of call back to late 80s, early 90s stuff as well, like Beach House or Better Person. The whole playlist has a sound that's almost overwhelmingly nostalgic because of this. The influences and sounds on here aren't so old that I'm out of touch with them, but they're kind of just barely out of my reach where they intrigue me further. They suck me into a soundscape of like really saturated colors and just warmth. There's really no other way to describe it. And that's where the decade tip kind of comes in. Now this might be a little dangerous if you don't want your playlist to feel nostalgic. I think picking stuff that either harkens back to older stuff or just is older stuff inherently is a good move, because you got, you know, analog, warm production, and just stuff that like you're not always listening to every day and might be better suited for the occasion anyway. There are a few outliers here with regards to the broader trends I found in this playlist. The outliers are the occasional R&B cuts, but I don't really view them as outliers because the sequencing is so good. Like they're either sandwiched by other R&B cuts or contemporary indie that pulls from the same sound palette, so it's all good. I like it all. And the last thing that I found with this playlist is that the two most commonly used words in the titles of songs were love and you. I'm not even kidding. That's just how it worked out. Overall, can I say that Charlie was really thinking about any of this when putting the playlist together? I think maybe. I think maybe like 20% of what I said was fully intentional in the moment. But I think most of it was just really, really good intuition. But you don't want to hear that from me. You want to hear that from Charlie.
I guess tell people like when did you make this, and like what was the like what drove you to make it, and then how do you feel about where it's at now?
Yeah, so I think I first made this playlist 5-6 years ago. I think even before I'm dating my girlfriend Michelle now, who I now live with, and we've been dating for over 4 years. Originally, it just started like, I never had an album specifically I could pick to put on that like I wanted to use to when I wanted to hook up with someone. So then I was just like, screw it, I'll make a playlist. To be honest, it's funny that this resonates with anybody else at all, because this was a personal project that I just didn't even realize got a bunch of likes on Spotify until a while later. Like, because one time I shared it on the 4chan music board, because I used to live there back in the day. Before I got involved in making music and got in like my whole community I'm in now, I was just like online, but I wasn't a Reddit person. I didn't really understand it. So I was unfortunate.
It's okay.
And I put that playlist up there on like a playlist thing, and it got like 20 likes like off rip, and I was like, all right, let me just keep this then. But then it started getting a little bit deeper. Like when you were talking about the sequencing and like if I thought about it and stuff, I would agree it was not the forefront, but like I had feelings about the sequencing, the tempos, the years, the vocals and stuff. Not really. That just happened to be the type of music that I listen to. It's not like I like had this playlist and then I was like, okay, let me try to go find music that fits this playlist. It was the opposite way around. It was as I was listening to stuff, I would come across a song and I would be like, this is Makeout music. I would put it in the playlist. Then I would kind of go back in and figure out where it fit in. There's songs from like the 50s and like the 60s and stuff, like the Julie London song. Like that's one of my favorite songs ever. And I just was listening to that one day and I was like, Makeout music. Like, I was just
I mean, you made it one of my favorite songs ever. I wasn't on the Julie London bit until I heard that. And I think it's funny too because my entire like friend group, for the most part, uses this playlist. This is giving the impression like all we do is like hook up with people, which is not true. But
no, I know what you're saying.
but like some of them just like put it on like and just fucking like stare at the ceiling. It could be like a longing playlist too, which I find interesting.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Like, what's funny is like I play this music all the time, so like I'll just be like.
Well, that seems painful for you though. Like you play this music all the time.
All the time. I'm a pretty comfortable person.
But yeah, the thing that I was like, okay, I don't know if he listens to this like actually all the time. Maybe like the Usher cuts and the Aaliyah cuts.
No, I love Usher. I like old Usher. That old R&B that's on there, like that 90s R&B and those 2000s R&B cuts. Like I'm listening to those albums.
Yeah.
It was funny, especially like one of the first R&B cut I put on there. I was like, what the hell am I gonna do with this thing?
One of the first R&B cuts you have here is the Selena cut, "Dreaming of You."
Oh, that song. That song is like, that song's just like heaven. The best way I can describe how I decide what to put on there is like if within like a minute I'm like, this is heaven. I want to live in this song.
That makes sense, but I actually meant to also say to you, I gotta send you manipulator music bingo because a lot of this music is textbook manipulator music, dog. I'm sorry. I meant to say that to you, but like you're aware. I'm sure you're aware.
Are taking the good music. That's not my fault. Like I'm out here being the real one, I'm shacked up with my girlfriend for years. I'm out here not manipulating. I just got the good shit, and the manipulators are out here like, oh, I can get bitches like that. So then they take all the good music.
It's true. They're kind of appropriating it in a terrible way. And I don't like it. I think a lot of playlists these days are just like very, I guess, vibe oriented, but very vaguely, very loosely, and there's not really much effort.
I have a very strong, I think you probably caught wind of this. I have a strong hatred towards a lot of like playlist culture and a lot of like how modern music is kind of operating in general. Playlists in general, I don't listen to any besides my own. Like, I make them for myself because I have so much beef with how most playlists and most things are operated. I don't pay for a single submission. I don't pay for anything with my music. And for the reason that being is I got friends who do the same thing. And we all just try to keep the main focus on the music, keeping that forward. And then if shit takes off, then that's how it's meant to be. And I think playlists kind of perpetuate the opposite of that. So Makeout music was my answer to that. Like you said, playlists now, especially curated ones, they're made by people who listen to playlists. They're not pulling from catalogs. They're not pulling from albums. They're pulling from playlists other playlists that they found. And this is the cycle. That's why this vibe ends up so diluted. We're pulling from the source to make out music. It's just I'm listening to music that I find that I like, and I'm really thinking about it. It really has to flow through my gut and figure out, is this going to actually work? I would never let anybody pay to get on Makeout music. This whole video even is insane to me because like the fact that like a personal project like this is even getting talked about and going to be shown to other people is fucking crazy. But it's also exciting. Like it's cool how you like came to me about it in this whole video. It feels very respectable, like and respectful. So I very much appreciate that you were willing to break it down and like talk to me about this.
Yeah, of course, man. Like I said, it's been an essential part of my quarantine, and I was like, I was looking around the music scene. I was like, I have not come across a playlist with so obvious of an effort behind it before. So, yeah. So thank you for doing this, man. That was a great way to close. I appreciate that, and thanks for coming on.
It just kind of happened. I just rambled on.
No, it was a great closer. I appreciate it. Anything you want to plug?
My Twitter is APT9CHARLIE, apartment 9 Charlie. Follow me on there because I retweet a lot of really, really cool artists that you will not find unless you're really tapped into just actual people. So if you want to find some really tiny artists that are doing some cool shit right now, follow me on Twitter. And also if you want to reach out, I'm very willing to talk about any of this shit. I love talking about music.
Thanks for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you, Sergio. Seriously, this is fucking cool.
All right, thanks for watching. I know this is a totally different one. I'm trying something new. But comment your favorite Makeout tunes, playlists, albums below. Always love hearing about that stuff. I will put Charlie's playlist down below as well. Have it. It's free. I'm not gatekeeping it. And I'll see you in the next one.